Hey guys, Paul here. So recently I've been playing a lot more in-person paper Yu-Gi-Oh! I went to YCS Houston obviously a couple months back, but I've also just been going to locals a lot more after kind of not doing it very much over the last year, just to see, what the game is like these days. I don't just want to play Master Duel. I want to actually pick up my cards, shuffle them, sit across the table from somebody and just, play Yu-Gi-Oh, right? And something that I've kind of noticed is that I don't actually think that there's enough time in a Yu-Gi-Oh round. And it's a little bit complicated because this isn't really about the end of match procedures that Yu-Gi-Oh has. I know a lot of people have their complaints with those, and I'm kind of one of them. I think it's a little bit weird, but more so around just the fact that the way that modern Yu-Gi-Oh plays out is not super conducive to the typical time structure that the game has had up until the last few years. So when I think about how not just combos are a super long thing, but in a reading cards and understanding them way and processing boards way, it's really rough. Alec and I did a bonus episode of the podcast. It's a members only one where we kind of got into this with why Yu-Gi-Oh players don't really like reading cards. And even though it's a meme, there's some real truth to it because cards are long. Card text is just really long to read. However, it's not that it's long without purpose. Problem solving card text is really well written, and it's very easy to actually understand what a card functionally is doing and how it resolves and stuff like that. You can know what's a cost, you know what targeting is, conditions, ifs, thens, whatever. That's all very clear and well written, but the thing is actually just reading cards, especially cards that you are unfamiliar with for the first time, typically is kind of difficult. And it's even harder when you are facing a deck or an archetype that you're just unfamiliar with. So this is something that I've not only experienced myself, but also just observed from a lot of other players at locals, is that whenever they're facing unfamiliar archetypes, maybe you're playing against Mimigul for the first time, maybe someone is playing against Melodious for the first time, archetypes that you're not overly familiar with, we're not talking oh, it's just Malice, everybody plays Malice, everybody knows what that does, everybody kind of knows what the Fiendsmith cards do. When you know what a deck or an engine does, you can sort of ignore it, give your opponent the benefit of the doubt that they're not really going to be cheating. They're just going to be resolving this rather long combo normally, and that, it'll just happen as you expect. But with an archetype that you don't know about, you got to pick up the cards and read them. And reading the cards, good, highly encouraged, or is it? Because I've noticed that a lot of people have to pick up cards and read them multiple times, and there's just usually not enough time to comfortably read a card and understand what it means in the context of a deck and put it all together within the duel itself. And if you do that, you kind of run the risk of just running out the clock. And some people would say, well, that's slow playing. He keeps picking up this card and reading it. He should know what it does. You've already read it one time. But ask yourself this. Do you actually know what every archetype in Yu-Gi-Oh's game plan and stuff is? How much of that do you know, and how quickly can you pick up on that in the middle of the round? I've seen this be a real point of struggle for more intermediate level players. Not saying I'm a super high level player myself, but just people who kind of just follow the game more casually have to pick up cards and read them, and it just seems there's not always enough time to do that. For an example, just for myself, I play Voiceless Voice, and for what it's worth, the main Voiceless Voice opening combo doesn't take super long relative to some more intense combo decks in Yu-Gi-Oh these days. But when I've finished my field and have to kind of lay everything out, my opponent will typically be okay, what does everything do? And I have to go through and sort of try to briefly explain what the cards do, or maybe I can offer the cards to them to read, but offering the cards to them to read still takes a lot of time. Sometimes people will just sort of be okay, can I target things, can I not? What can I attack, what can I not? What's indestructible, what's not? And it's just sort of I don't know, it's become more present to me that that's a hard thing to do in modern Yu-Gi-Oh given the time constraints. There's also a second part to this though, which is that because of all of the searching and sending from deck and just shuffling and stuff that goes on, there's not really a lot of time to properly shuffle your opponent's deck. Now I know what people are going to say here. Well, we all know when your opponent's searching a bunch, you just kind of tell your opponent, okay, I'm going to be going back in, and then I'll just shuffle and let you cut at the end of the turn, or before I draw a card or whatever. And that's typically the normal way of doing things. But let's take a step back from that. The official Yu-Gi-Oh rule book says that whenever your opponent has modified the order of cards in their deck, searching a card or sending something, to the graveyard, you are supposed to shuffle and offer your opponent the chance to cut. We have expedited this process and kind of circumvented it But what does it say though that like playing in the way that the official rulebook tells you to is kind of looked down upon? Like it's seen as wasting time. I mean, just that whole time thing in general is something that's always been a little bit iffy to me because in Yu-Gi-Oh and every card game really, there's like kind of this idea about slow play. Your opponent they're stalling, kind of playing out the clock, especially in those last few minutes of a round where it gets really tense and stuff. But like it's weird because early in a round, picking up a card to read it is not really seen as any sort of crime or transgression. And even taking a few moments to just look at your hand to think about, okay, what do I want to do this turn? Because, combos are long, the turn's going to get crazy. Taking just a few seconds at the start of the round will not get you, no one's going to scream slow play immediately. But doing the same thing at the end of the round suddenly does. And that's always been strange to me. And part of it, you could just be like, well, at the end of the round, you should know everything that's going on. Like, you should be more familiar with your opponent's deck or whatever. But oftentimes I find that at the end of the round, that's usually when game states are at their most, kind of stressed and tense. And suddenly there's just so much less forgiveness for wanting to clarify what a card does or, like how something works. And I get it. This is a very fine line. Like, it's tough. Things get so blurry with like, well, are they pretending that they don't know what this does? Are they just triple checking the graveyard just to waste time and things like that? And I get it. That's just contextual. It's going to kind of vary from game to game. But I just have found that more and more and more on average, I'm seeing games at my locals and at regionals and YCSs going to time more often. Like, it just seems like it just happens more. I don't know if it's that, people are just choosing to slow play more. I know that's always like kind of an accusation around like these new time rules. But in the direct observations I've had and like seen, it just seems like it mostly comes from people trying to read cards that they don't fucking know what they do. Like it's rough. I don't know. Has anybody else maybe noticed this? Is it something that, when people ask you what your cards do, what is your typical solution for that? Do you kind of try to explain what stuff does? Do you just say like, okay, here, you can pick them up and read them if you want and like figure it out? I know I've seen like arguments from like, like judge figures on Yu-Gi-Oh Twitter where people are like, how much information is your opponent owed to you when you like answer? If I ask you a question about like what your card does, how much do you have to tell me versus how much can you kind of shorten? How much do I have to infer and all these things? And, that's not really the point of like this particular video, but it is its own thing. Like in the Voices Voice example, I can tell you, okay, like you can't, like, let's say that I have like Low and Skull Guardian on the field, and then like Barrier the Voiceless Voice. This is a typical Voiceless Voice setup that most people know about. Although if you don't know what that is, and you're like, hey Paul, why didn't you like put the pictures of the cards on screen? Then that's kind of an example of what I'm talking about right now. Well, anyway, I can tell my opponent if they ask like, okay, can I target your monsters? Do I just say, no, you can't target my monsters? Do I say, no, you can't target my light monsters? Do I say, no, you can't target them because Voiceless, like Barrier the Voiceless Voice is on the field? Do I say, you can't target them because Barrier's on the field and I control like Low and Skull Guardian? Should it just be like, okay, here, you pick up the card and read it yourself and like figure it out? And if they have to pick it up and read it a second time to like kind of confirm that, are they now suddenly slow playing me? Because, there's so many things like that that just get like into these weird gray areas that I don't love. And it just reminds me that, at least in this way, I kind of find Yu-Gi-Oh! Master Duel to be a more accessible way to play, because it's able to just keep the chess timer style clock where like, just your time runs down when you are prompted with a decision. Otherwise, your time is not running down. It's easier to like look at card effect and stuff. That's not a totally fair comparison. One's a digital game, one's a paper physical game. There's just limitations to like how paper Yu-Gi-Oh works. And I also don't know like what the solution to this is. Like, I mean, it's not like I can just make the cards easier to read. I mean, maybe you could try to do that, but like, should you increase the clock for like round timers from like 45 minutes to 50 minutes? Is that even like good enough? Like, I'm not really sure. An interesting recent like anecdote that I had was that there was a judge I was playing a casual game at locals the other week, and there's a judge figure, a guy who like does judging. He wasn't judging at the time. We weren't in a tournament. We were just kind of all sitting around playing, and like he told the person that I was dueling against, he was like, yeah, like if I was judging right now, I'd call you for slow playing. It was interesting because, and like he was like half joking, but it's interesting because like I didn't feel that the person across from me was slow playing, because the game state was just very complex. Like we just both had a lot of things going on the field. Like, you know, a lot of decks nowadays have all these face-up continuous spells and traps going on, like monsters with different stuff. And so I was like, oh, I don't feel like he's really slow playing. This seems like this is a fucking mess to think through. But like there already is that expectation, like if you just play regularly, that you just gotta fucking know this stuff, and like there's so little forgiveness for it. So I have a lot of respect for the people who are able to keep it all together and like quickly process and like make sense of board states and all of that. But I ain't gonna fucking lie. I don't know if I could like handle that kind of pressure. And maybe people just be like, oh yeah, Paul, you're just slow playing. You little fucking shit. You better like give up. You game loss. So I don't know. I'd like to hear though what other people think about this. The main question just being like, do you think that there is enough time to properly play Yu-Gi-Oh? Like properly read your opponent's cards and properly even like, you know, shuffle and offer your deck for cutting? It's an interesting thought. I wanted to hear other people's opinions on it. I don't think that there's like, you know, a straight solid answer, just whatever. But that's what we do on this channel. We talk about Yu-Gi-Oh. I don't have all the answers. Not going to pretend to have all the answers, but maybe people in the comments do. That's usually how YouTube works. All right, cool. I'll see you guys in the next one. Pass turn.